Welcome to the Pod Circle podcast, where we provide practical tips and insights for every podcaster.
Whether you're just getting started or you're already a seasoned podcast pro, these conversations dive into the topics that matter most to you. This week, we are going to give you 4 ways that your podcast can help you grow your online presence. Make sure that you're subscribed to our channel on YouTube, where we post all of our videos, and follow along to this episode or catch up on past shows. All right, it's time to talk about growing your online presence. And I think this is a little bit of a buzzword, right? If you are a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, a manager responsible for a P&L, you probably have heard this word, but you may be wondering, what exactly is my online presence? So let's just start with a baseline definition. According to HubSpot, an online presence can be defined by how easy it is to find a brand or company online. It's important for building your brand's reputation, increasing brand awareness, and providing visibility to your products or services when users are searching for related words. So, basically, whether you're a nonprofit, for-profit business, a speaker, a coach, you name it, your online presence really matters. You want people to be able to easily find you through a Google search, through recommendations from other people on social media. 97% of consumers use the internet to find a business. So if your target market is below retirement age, they're using the internet to find a business. My father, who's 60, exclusively uses the internet to find businesses. So often when we think of online presence, we think of strictly of our social media numbers. And while I believe that that's important, it goes far beyond that. Your online presence incorporates a variety of areas. So that means it can be boosted and grown through several different areas, including social media. So here's how your podcast can help you reach the listeners who matter most, and in turn, increase your reach, engagement, and revenue. Kyle, what is that first way?
The first one is to put a face to your brand and build trust. And we say it all the time on this podcast that people buy from brands or people that they know, like, and trust. So podcasts are an incredible way to show up for your ideal customer on a consistent basis and nurture that relationship. And at Pod Circle, we've seen great success by using our own podcast to build trust with our target audience. Business owners and nonprofit leaders who want to leverage the power of podcasting to promote their products and services and optimize their time and resources through efficient marketing. And I think that is exactly what podcasting has the potential to be, a very efficient marketing vehicle. And in our last episode, we reiterated all the different ways that you can repurpose content with podcasting. So what I love about podcasting is it gives you the ability to quite literally put a face to your brand and build trust. Every week on our show, we provide free and hopefully valuable tips and insights for every podcaster. It's literally our tagline. And by doing that, we position ourselves as subject matter experts in the podcasting space, provide visibility into our services, and build brand reputation and equity. So we believe the same can be true for you as well.
I remember you joking one time that someone asked you, like, would you pay someone to record you so that you had content every week? And you said, quite literally, I do. So we do this every week so that you have social content. We do it also so that we have a way to point people back to the incredible knowledge that you have and the resources that you're creating. But I just think it's so valuable when you can put a face and say, oh, I know Kyle, I recognize him. And there's something about seeing someone that you start to build trust.
Totally.
It's just like the psychology of it.
Yep.
So the second, I think this kind of goes in line with all of this that we've been talking about, is you can supercharge your marketing, and that will in turn really increase your engagement and your online presence. So if you've been listening very long, you've probably heard us talking about viewing your podcast as a content machine. I really harked on this on our last episode with the 10 tips in 10 minutes, but when you put so much effort into doing a really great episode, you want to make sure you're getting the bang for your buck. Or as a leader once told me, and I often use a lot, you want to get the most juice from your squeeze. And so how do we get the most juice from our squeeze in the time it takes to produce a podcast? You create content out of it. You often joke that starting the Pod Circle podcast didn't just help your marketing strategy, it gave you a strategy.
Totally.
And we have, in several of our episodes, talked about all the different things that you can get from one episode, from videos to copy to show notes to social media posts to blogs to newsletters. There's so much you can get when you get strategic about pulling and culling content from each episode.
All right. The next one is tap into your guests' platforms. So a great way to grow your online presence is to expand your sphere of influence. And an effective strategy that we found for our clients at PodCircle is optimizing the reach of their guests' platforms. So here's what we're talking about. Featuring a guest on your podcast that has a significant reach and a loyal following can introduce your podcast to their audience. So connecting those dots and especially if there are similarities between the spaces that you and your guest are in, that can be very advantageous for just expanding the reach of your show and putting you in front of the people that you want to be in front of. So when you partner with others, they might promote your podcast to their email subscribers, and you can do the same for them. And then this cross promotion can be a powerful way to attract new listeners and potential email subscribers interested in your content. So a final pro tip here on this is to make it easy for your guests to promote their episode on your podcast by sending them any video clips that you produce from that episode, graphics, quotes, things like that. Send it to them. Make sure that those look and sound really great and, feature them really well. Then they're going to be more apt to actually want to release that and, link back to the podcast. And I think that's one of the most effective ways that you can cross promote.
One more podcast pro tip here that I forgot to add is that one of the best guests I've ever had on emailed me and said, hey, would you be okay if I re-release your episode on my podcast and put it in my stream as like, oh, I was on this other show. And so it introduced our podcast to a completely different audience. And I was more apt and more willing to partner with that guest again, because I loved her and she was so responsive. So if you have a podcast or you are asked as a business leader to be on a podcast, this is an idea of how to partner with one another and cross promote as well.
I like that.
So I just wanted to add that in because I feel like it's one that I had forgotten about till you started talking.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
All right. The last way that your podcast can help you grow your online presence is by honing your message. Use your podcast as a place to test out and dial in your messaging. The sheer volume of content that you're going to be putting out as a podcaster really does provide a remarkable opportunity to hone your messaging. If you go back and listen to some of our first episodes, you'll notice that we've gotten more strategic on how we present the services that PodCircle provides for people. We've gotten more strategic in who we're talking to and how we're talking to them. Yep. This has been a testing ground for that. There's something about being able to put in the reps of talking about it when you start to instill the message within yourself. Yep. So use it as the first place to try new messaging. Pivot in how you proposition your products and services. See what's landing. So here are some ideas of how you could hone your messaging and use your podcast to do that. Ads. Are there specific propositions that are working better? When you do an ad and use these words, are you getting more leads? Are you getting more people interested or reaching out to you? Sticky statements. What do you find yourself saying organically over and over and over again? Go back to episodes. You can put the transcript from your episode into an AI and tell them what are the statements that you see the most. Back in my day in marketing, it would be like a word cloud. But ChatGPT, you could put it in there and they could list like, here are the most common phrases that you use.
That's a great
Those
tip.
are sticky statements. Those are landing with your audience and you can repeat them in other places. Use it to inform your email copy, your social copy. Is there a specific tone that's resonating? Be really strategic. When we yell at you and say, don't do this, that's, we can notice maybe that's not resonating. We would never do that.
Not big yellers over here.
And we're cheering you on. Yes. But just see if there's a tone or if there's specific brand voice that's resonating. And then I think this is one that you really tapped into, Kyle, is what titles or topics are the most listened to or responded to. And we've pivoted our strategy and pivoted how we title things. We've pivoted what we present. We've pivoted different themes and things based on, hey, people really gravitated towards this.
Yes.
So I think that is a helpful way to hone your messaging. Your listeners, hopefully, are your target audience. And if they're not, I would encourage you to listen to one of our recent episodes where we really dive into how to identify and engage your target audience and make those pivots if it needs to happen.
Yeah. And even in the life, of this podcast over the past, I guess we're coming up on a year if we're not there already, we've just segmented very specifically into business owners being our ideal listeners. Business owners and nonprofit leaders are really our main two, I guess, demographics that we're going after in terms of providing support to them. And as we do that, you're going to hear us, and probably have in recent episodes, heard us refine that in our messaging and even how we talk on the podcast. and our calls to actions and things like that. So I just think, like you said, Mackenzie, I think a podcast is a really great place to kind of figure that out and work it out. And, you know, in us, we're going to refine that even more in the next year. And I just think that's part of it. That's part of marketing. It's creating that feedback and saying, okay, what are people responding to? What are the words that we're saying over and over in the phrases, and how are those connecting to people, and how can we refine our messaging out of that? I think a podcast is a great place to do that.
And I can hear some of you saying, well, do I have to stop or remove the episodes that have old messaging or old? Nope. No. Just keep on going. Because I think it'll show an evolution in your brand. It will, again, continue to build trust. And the majority of the time, new listeners start with the most recent episode, and then they go back sometimes.
That's true.
I think I would just encourage you to let it be there. I think the fact that you're showing longevity goes a lot longer than subtle tweaks in the messaging, because people aren't consciously noticing it, but their psyche is noticing it.
Yes.
And how you're shifting and changing and appealing more to them.
It's true. And if you start out on a platform like Transistor, where you're running dynamic ads, that gives you the ability to go and run the newer, updated ads with the new the new language and everything on past episodes. So that's part of the beauty of in why we evangelize platforms like Transistor.fm as a preferred hosting platform. If you're wise enough or lucky enough to get on that from the very beginning, that makes it really easy to just make sure that all of your ads and things are current from episode 1 to episode 101.
Kyle is preaching to the choir, because my other podcast has 155 regular episodes, and
which is amazing.
Like 20 or 30 bonus episodes. And we switched over to Transistor, but I have got baked in ads, and hurts me inside, guys. So start on the right foot. We really hope that this episode has been informative and valuable. We really do believe that not only can your podcast increase your reach and revenue, but it might actually be one of the best ways to build and grow your online presence as you continually show up and serve your target market.
You notice the theme here: show up. You're going to hear that from us a lot. Keep showing up for your audience. So if you're ready to take the next step in your podcast journey, we can help you at every step of the way. Schedule time with me to chat and learn how we can support you in that launch, and just even getting you from the launch to just the day-to-day of your podcast, the editing, the post-production and things. It's really our bread and butter and what we excel at here at PodCircle. So again, if you are a business owner or a leader in a business or a nonprofit, and you are having conversations around podcasting, and you see what it could be for your brand, like we say, putting a face to your brand, I think that podcasting is one of the greatest ways you can do it. It's just such an efficient way to market yourself and build your brand. So again, we offer a suite of podcast offerings at PodCircle that make it so easy for podcasters every day. Takes the overwhelm out of it, because I think a lot of people, when they start, maybe they'll buy a course on how to start a podcast, or they'll go down the YouTube rabbit hole. Man, it can get really overwhelming really quick. There's a lot of verbiage. There's a lot of podcast hosting platforms and remote recording solutions. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So partnering with someone who knows all about this stuff so that you don't have to be the expert in it, I think is one of the keys to longevity and effectiveness in podcasting. So Mackenzie, anything else for us this episode?
No, that's what we've got for you. Hopefully we'll see you next week.
See you next week.